So Bitcoin climbed past $60,000 for the first time in 6 months. And that is on news that potentially the SEC may not block all the ETFs that they're currently deciding on, that are currently have proposals in at the moment. So let's take a few back steps here. ETFs. Right? These things that we've been hearing about for years and years and years and years and years and years, that people keep putting in these proposals, and then the SEC keeps coming back and saying, actually, no, you need to change this thing, you need to edit this thing, you need to remove your application, all of this. The way that these filings work is that an ETF application automatically goes through if the SEC doesn't have any qualms with it. So, for example, if they don't have, any suggested changes to make, or if they don't ask them to directly pull the filing. So there was a report in Bloomberg that says that out of all the ETF filings that are coming up to deadlines for when the SEC has to decide either way whether they want changes, there are potentially at least some that Bloomberg expects the SEC will not block. So on that news, Bitcoin just skyrocketed and we pushed past 60K. There have also been some false reports about the SEC going ahead and actually approving something. That has not happened yet. Their deadline has not passed, and the SEC doesn't just approve ETFs. But it is still exciting news, this. I'm going to throw this straight to you, Will, for your thoughts on all of this. Is Bloomberg right? Are we going to see an ETF finally allowed to launch?
I'm not an ETF whisperer, so I will not confirm one way or the other.
Really,
but it does
Will?
look pretty good. Yeah, believe it or not, do not have that much expertise. I'll boot it up to Zach here in a second, but I will say that it is wild to see the predictions come true from this year about Bitcoin's price, whether that be like the sell-off in May, comeback September is going to be really rough. October, you're going to see a big price bump. And then maybe going into Christmas, you have like a really higher push with price just based on this speculation around ETFs being approved. That happens, like that's pretty impressive. Crystal balls out there. That's pretty amazing to me. Zach, I want to get your thoughts though, because there is a lot of nuance with this subject.
There's a lot of nuance. This is potentially a big deal, right? So this is a flavor of ETF known as the Bitcoin Futures ETF. This is not based on the spot market price of Bitcoin, which had been what a lot of people have been trying for a long time to get across the line. I think it was like 2013 or 2014 that the Winklevi filed like maybe the first Bitcoin ETF application. So the crypto industry is right to be excited about what appears to be a major milestone within reach. And this is what's happening, but with a couple of modifications, right? Gary Gensler signaled that he liked a Bitcoin futures ETF over a Bitcoin spot market ETF, and a Bitcoin futures ETF application boom followed. And what is being signaled in this report from Bloomberg as of last night is that one or more of these Bitcoin futures ETF products will get the green light from US regulators, which will be a first for any Bitcoin-related ETF after many years and dozens of applications had tried to get across the finish line. So to see a little bit of euphoria in the market makes sense. That this is happening. That this is a key stamp of approval from U.S. regulators at a time when regulation and crackdown seems to be the big conversation point. So for this to occur last night, based on sources, for this to potentially be in the process of becoming real is certainly significant, and the market is responding accordingly. I don't know if anyone here thought that this was going to be the year for this to happen, just given recent comments and sentiment out of the SEC. But it appears as though we may have gotten that one wrong, and this could happen imminently. So certainly something that we're watching closely over here in the newsroom, and it's something that we're going to be following today, over the weekend, and probably early next week. Jen, I'm going to toss it up to you, though, for your thoughts.
Yeah, this is such an exciting way to start Friday. I mean, I didn't think it was going to happen before the end of the year. But Zach, to your point, when Gensler made those comments about him favoring a futures ETF, I thought maybe something might be coming down the pipeline. And here we are. I wanted to read something from the Bloomberg report. So it cited people familiar with the matter saying that proposals by ProShares and Invesco are based on futures contracts that were filed under mutual fund rules that Gensler has said provide significant investor protections. So we're back to those significant investor protections. And I'm just wondering, what kind of investor protections could one ETF offer over another. I would assume that a lot of the protections that people are talking about are very similar, but I don't know, Naomi, if you have more information or insight into that.
So the reason a lot of people think that Gensler is favoring a Bitcoin futures ETF over a normal one is the idea of what is approved SEC custody of Bitcoin. Now, a lot of futures contracts are often settled in cash and not in Bitcoin. And that is the case with a lot of the filings that have been put forward. They're futures contracts that will be settled in cash. And there's a big difference between custodying cash in a way that's approved by the SEC and the SEC putting out guidelines to determine what actual approved custody of Bitcoin looks like, which they haven't really provided any guidance for. So the fact that they haven't really figured that out, it suggests that these consumer protections might fall in line of like, how is that money, how is that asset that's actually backing that ETF being stored? Is it approved by the SEC? Now, they haven't, in true SEC style, they haven't provided any guidance that actually lays out as much, but this is just speculation about why they might be moving towards one rather than another. But Zach, I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah. So I think, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, the futures market is far more regulated in the crypto space. You see these big players who sort of exist within existing frameworks. And I think that was something that in terms of consumer protection was important for Jay Clayton and for Gary Gensler, the former chair and the current chair of the SEC. Interesting to see this unfold. I think there's just going to be a lot of attention on this. We saw an incremental update this morning indicating that the NASDAQ had approved the listing of one of these potential Bitcoin futures ETFs that might get the green light. So there does seem to be sort of incremental progress and a lot of work being done behind the scenes to make sure that this gets the full green light sometime in the near future. But as it stands right now, we don't know when that's going to be, but we're certainly watching the SEC website closely for any additional documents that are coming out.
You guys will finally know what it feels like to be in Canada.
Whoa.
Low blow, Jen.
Sorry.
I do have a question for Naomi really quickly. Gary Gensler came into office and a lot of people were very excited for him to be in that position. And then quickly, I think people realized that they weren't going to get what they first expected. And now we're seeing some Bitcoin products maybe get approved. And if these do go through, it kind of sets a tone. I feel that Bitcoin is okay in the SEC's purview and maybe some of these other crypto tokens are not. What would your take be on the SEC kind of picking winners and losers on that front?
Yeah, it's definitely not the SEC's role to pick winners and losers. Hester Peirce has spoken extensively on that and pushed back against decisions that the SEC chair has actually made, or the SEC in general, I should say, has made. She has said in the past, the SEC's role is to make sure that the products out there have appropriate transparency and consumer protections, but it is not their role to decide, which products are allowed and which products are not. Just, making sure that they all have appropriate transparency associated. So I think it's terrible that the SEC has basically found a loophole in this. And if they have a way to stop a crypto product, they're stopping it, whether it's through cease and desists, or whether it's through attacking them with lawsuits, or whether it's through asking for changes in Bitcoin ETFs or whatever. Like they're really finding ways to shut down areas of the crypto economy. If this Bitcoin ETF goes through, yes, I think you're right. It does signal that some products are not like others, and that is the SEC overstepping. It's really not their role to be doing that.